My name is Anita Hofschneider. I'm a reporter at Honolulu Civil Beat. For the past couple of months, I've been working on a story about a series of sexual abuse lawsuits against the Catholic Church on Guam. There have been more than 100 lawsuits against the Archdiocese alleging sexual abuse by more than a dozen priests. One priest has admitted to abusing as many as 20 boys, and so far more than 50 lawsuits have been filed against him. But of the 16 priests who have been accused, only one has been defrocked. I wanted to go to Guam to work on this story and to tell this story because it's a pivotal moment in the island's history. But more than that, it's not just another story about sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. It's a story about how members of the priesthood allegedly betrayed the trust of a community where Catholicism is embedded into the fabric of local culture. Stories of sexual abuse are important everywhere, but on Guam, it's especially interesting because of the history of Spanish colonization on the islands. The Spanish came in the 17th century, and they colonized the indigenous Chamorro people. Even today, the people there still celebrate fiestas, pray during novenas, hold 9 days rosaries when somebody dies. Catholicism is a huge part of people's lives, including 85% of the population. As somebody who grew up in the neighboring island of Saipan, I remember growing up and going to those rosaries and fiestas. And when I visited a couple months ago for this story, those cultural traditions hadn't changed. We found out that Guam's church has been really divided for several years between traditional Catholics and those who are part of a branch of the church called the Neo-Catechumenal Way. It was this rift that helped bring these lawsuits to the surface and these allegations to the surface. It took a very carefully orchestrated campaign by some opponents of the Archbishop on Guam to convince some of the alleged abuse victims to speak out publicly. Only then did lawmakers actually get rid of the statute of limitations for civil lawsuits regarding sexual abuse, and it was then that the floodgates were opened. We talked to many people on Guam who had heard rumors of abuse or rumors of priests not being celibate, but hadn't realized the extent of the problem. It took this concerted campaign for people and the church to have to really confront the legacy of sex abuse that was happening in its ranks. It wasn't easy to get this story. At first, it was difficult to find alleged victims and to convince them to speak to me. Some of them did, but they weren't willing to have their names included, their faces shown, their voices recorded. The stories themselves were very difficult to hear and very emotional. And the main takeaway that the plaintiffs said they hope that people get from the article is that it's okay to speak out if you are a victim of sexual abuse. Many of the plaintiffs we spoke to decided to file lawsuits after they read about other allegations, and they're hopeful that the story will be shared widely and that if there are other alleged victims out there, that they will come forward. Thanks to funding from the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting and our members here at Civil Beat, we were able to spend 10 days there on the ground, seeing what Catholicism on Guam is like in practice.